Hey everybody, this is Doug with Artfully Rogue. Now, if you're in the market for a metal hole punch, I have one for you that we purchased off Amazon, and it cuts up to 16 gauge stainless, or at least that's what we use it for. And it's been working real well for us, except for one minor flaw. We managed to fix it, but stick around to the end of the video and I'll tell you what that was. So this is what basically comes in the kit. You have your hydraulic ram, you have the hose that now goes to the, I don't know what you want to call it, the punch driver. At least that's what's on here. So you also get 6 dies and punches. You have 3 spacers. You have a threaded shaft that handles the larger dies, but then you also have 2 sets that will help you use the smaller dies. Now, in order to use the bigger dies, you have to punch a smaller hole to get to the bigger hole, or of course you can, drill a hole. But let me show you how this gets set up. We're gonna take this shaft. Now this comes with a hole in it, right? You wanna keep that up. This gets threaded into the punch driver. All right, then you want to take your spacers. Now you want to take your smaller diameter shaft, thread that into the larger diameter shaft, remove the knurled knob. I love that word, knurled. All right, now you're going to take the female side of the punch, put that on, and then this is where you actually want to put your steel. But before you can do that, you have to at least drill a 7/16 pilot hole so that can go on. But let's grab a piece that I've already drilled. So for this one, I'm going to use a 20 gauge mild steel where I have pre-drilled a 7/16 pilot hole. That way it goes around this particular shaft. Then you take your cutter head, all right, that goes directly onto the steel. And then you take your knurled knob, tighten that into place. And then you want to make sure that your dial is turned to the on position. You go clockwise to turn it on. And then simply press the lever and you'll start to see that die compress. Now, I usually kind of keep pumping until the die has pulled all the way through, because when you do that, now it won't come off here, release, unscrew the knurled thing, pulled off your steel, and now you've got a hole punch. Now again, the reason I do this all the way through, because then it makes it a little bit easier to get that piece out. If you don't push all the way through, it's a little too tight in there and it's difficult to get out. But now you're set up to actually do your bigger hole. All right, so now I'm gonna do the same thing, but this is 16 gauge. 16 gauge is much harder and oftentimes much more difficult to punch. I honestly can't recall if we have tried to punch anything thicker than 16 gauge with this. Primarily because this is what we use on our water basins and we need to put in drain plugs or things of that nature. But it will punch 16 gauge stainless for sure. And again, I'll pump that all the way through just to make sure that the punch hole, I guess you could say, gets where it needs to go. All right. We'll release that, everything comes back up. And sometimes you're gonna have this problem here, where as you bend it, it starts to warp a little bit. And so one of the things that you need to do is come back in, all right, tighten this back up. I'm glad this happened now because this is a problem that does happen on occasions, and at least now you can see it, and then you can also figure out how to fix it. Now, once you get to a point where you feel it bottom out, stop. You don't want to damage the punch part of the die. All right, you don't want to damage this because this has like the little sharp edges on it. All right, now it's tight, but it does come out. All right, now you've got that. So now we're going to move to the larger hole. And I'm actually going to take you over to a water feature that I'm doing right now. And we're going to go ahead and punch a larger hole that allows me to put this grommet into a water feature. All right, but before I go over there, let's go ahead and get ourselves set up. You can remove your spacers, you can remove the small extension, because now what you're going to be using is a larger die. Now I got to remember which die am I using here. I think I'm using this one, yeah. So something else to note, these are metric. All right, so this is a 49. I know that they have standard die punch sets. For some reason, I just ended up getting the metric one, but it's worked fine for me. Now, as you use the bigger dies, you don't need the extension, and the bottom die, the receiving die, slides right over the large shaft. And when you put your metal in here, which is going to be like this, all you do is screw that in and punch, which is what we're going to go do right now on the water feature. Now I made this hole just a little bit too big because I was not paying attention, but so there you go. That's your hydraulic hole punch. I picked it up off of Amazon. I'll leave a link to that down there in the description. But the smallest hole that you can punch with this particular kit is just over 7/8, and then the largest you can punch is right at 2 3/8. Now I'm sure that they have a variety of kits out there that do the exact same thing. And like I promised, we had a problem with this particular kit where as we were pumping the valve, it would not hold pressure. And no matter how many times we pumped, sometimes if you pump really fast, it would actually start to draw, but it would release. So what we ended up having to do was we ended up taking the hose off of the valve itself. And I would take hydraulic fluid and I would top it off. Now don't ask me where the fluid was going. It wasn't leaking anywhere. But as soon as I would fill it, tighten it back up again, it would work for 2 or 3 times. And then all of a sudden, it wouldn't work again. Now, I would say the last time I topped this thing off with hydraulic fluid was probably about a year ago, and it has worked fine ever since. But if you ever have that problem where it's just not holding pressure, remove the hose, make sure you do not get air in there, and then go ahead and top off with hydraulic fluid. Now, one of the things that also kind of makes this a little bit tricky is this hose is not flexible. It doesn't, well, I'll say flexible. You can flex it, but sometimes the hose is a bit restricting on where you want to put your punch driver and your handle. Realistically, that's the only drawback that I would see. Sometimes I wish this had a swivel on it, but I understand, you know, we could probably put a swivel on it ourselves. But if you're looking for a hydraulic punch, I would give this one a shot. It's done really well for us, other than the little hydraulic issue that we've had early on. And it's not bad as far as price goes. So if you found this useful, give me a thumbs up in this video. Give me some comments if you have found this one and you use it, or if you had any other problems, or maybe you found a different one and prefer it over this one. But hey, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I'll see you in the next video.